You still have their last text message. You know exactly where it is. You could open it right now. Some part of you checks it more than you'd ever admit. But the real answer to what you're supposed to do with that message, with that grief, is far stranger than anything a phone can hold. It's not written in an app. It's written into your bones, and it's at least 100,000 years old. Start here. In 1957, in a cave in northern Iraq called Shanidar, archaeologists uncovered a Neanderthal skeleton curled in the dirt. Around the body, soil samples showed unusually high concentrations of pollen. The excavator, Ralph Selecki, proposed something radical for its time. He suggested Neanderthals had laid flowers on their dead, a funeral tens of thousands of years before recorded history. Scientists argued about it for decades. Some said the pollen came from burrowing rodents, not mourners. But here's the part that never got argued away. The body itself had been placed deliberately, curled, positioned, not discarded. Why would that matter to a species barely capable of language? Because burial isn't really about the body. It never was. It's about what the living do with a hole that suddenly exists where a person used to be. Fast forward, and the evidence gets even stranger. Deep inside the Rising Star Cave system in South Africa, a chamber so narrow that only the slimmest researchers could squeeze through it, paleoanthropologist Lee Berger's team found the remains of Homo naledi. Not one body, many, deliberately placed in a chamber almost impossible to reach by accident. Homo naledi had a brain roughly a third the size of yours, and yet something pushed them, again and again, to carry their dead into darkness and leave them there. You want to know what's really unsettling? Nobody knows why. There's no food down there, no shelter, no reason to make that journey except one. Something in that species needed to do something with death. Not ignore it, not walk away from it. Do something. Archaeologist Paul Pettit, who has spent his career studying the origins of human burial, argues that this urge predates religion, predates language as we know it, predates almost everything we call civilization. The compulsion to mark a death came first. Meaning came later. You didn't invent grief rituals to explain death. Grief rituals came first, and explanations got built around them afterward like scaffolding around something already standing. Sit with that for a second. Before your ancestors had a word for soul, before they had a story about an afterlife, they already knew, somewhere in the body, that a death changes the shape of the group. Someone leaves, the space doesn't close on its own. Something has to be done to close it. This is where it gets stranger still. For most of human history, grief wasn't private. It wasn't something you processed alone in a quiet room, scrolling through old messages at 2 a.m. It was loud. It was public. It was choreographed. In parts of ancient Egypt, professional mourners were hired to wail, tear their clothing, and throw dust over their heads in the streets. Not because they personally loved the deceased, because the community needed to see grief performed. Loudly, visibly, together. Why would a society need to watch strangers cry? Because grief, at its core, was never just an emotion. It was information. It told the group something urgent. Someone who mattered here is gone. Reorganize, rebalance, take care of who's left. Psychologist George Bonanno, who has spent decades researching how humans actually cope with loss, found something that surprises most people. Grief doesn't follow neat stages. There's no fixed order of denial, anger, bargaining, depression, acceptance, no matter how many times you've heard it that way. Bonanno's research shows most people are far more resilient than that model suggests, and that grief tends to come in waves, triggered unpredictably, softening with time but never fully vanishing. Which means the ancient version of grief, loud, shared, physical, might have understood something your modern version has quietly lost. Because here's the twist. For most of human history, you were never expected to grieve alone. Someone sat with the body. Someone else prepared it. Someone else told the story of the person's life out loud to a room full of people who nodded because they remembered too. Grief was distributed, divided among many hands, many voices, many days of ritual, so that no single person had to carry the entire weight by themselves. Now think about how you grieve today. A notification, a phone screen, a message thread that goes silent and stays that way. You might attend a funeral that lasts an hour, then go back to work the next morning like nothing happened, because the modern world was never built around the ancient rhythm of mourning. It was built around productivity. Grief doesn't fit neatly into a schedule, so it gets compressed, rushed, privatized, until it becomes something you manage quietly instead of something a whole group carries with you. And yet, the old instinct hasn't disappeared. It's just changed shape. Watch what happens when someone dies today and their social media page stays online. People still visit it. They still write on it, months later, years later, as if the deceased might somehow read the words. Comment sections under a stranger's obituary photo fill with people who never met them, offering condolences anyway. It looks new. It looks like a strange side effect of the internet age. But it's the same behavior researchers found in that cave in Iraq. The same behavior Lee Berger's team found in that chamber in South Africa. Something in you still wants to mark the space where a person used to be. Still wants to say it out loud, or type it out loud, so the absence doesn't just sit there in silence. Maybe that's the real reason you haven't deleted that message thread. It's not because you're avoiding closure. It's because some ancient, wordless part of you understands that closure was never supposed to be instant, or private, or efficient. For most of the time humans have existed, you would have had a community pulling you through it, ritual by ritual, day by day, until the grief became something you could carry instead of something that crushed you. You don't have Shanidar Cave. You don't have professional mourners in the street. What you have is a notifications tab and a blinking cursor and an old text message you can't quite bring yourself to open or delete. So you still have their last text message. You know exactly where it is. And maybe the strangest part isn't that you keep checking it, it's that 100,000 years of human history already explains exactly why.